I was going to read something from the play I'm translating, but I couldn't get it together because I would have wanted to do it with multiple voices. So I'm going to read something that I translated a while ago, which is apt for the context we're in. In fact, something that our guide Carol Lee said when we were out last weekend made me think of this. She talked about preventing forest fires. I translated a short piece from the German called Prevent Forest Fires. I've actually forgotten whether the author is Swiss or Austrian. No, he's Austrian. Christoph Wilhelm Eigner. He's best known as a poet. I'll read a little bit of it in German and then switch to English. Verhindert Waldbrände. Wer vom waldumstellten Ort Wiepersdorf in der Mark Brandenburg hinausstrebt in die stämmige Natur, muss vor Eintritt in diese ein Schild zur Kenntnis nehmen mit der Aufschrift Verhindert Waldbrände. Das lässt den Fremdling stutzen. Wie soll er sich verhalten? Er wollte eigentlich müßig gehen, also nichts tun in der Waldesruhe. Nun wird er ante potas quietatis aufgefordert zu verhindern. Verhindert Waldbrände. Das ist eher ein Befehl. Hey, ihr da, wird man angeschnauzt. Der Fremde ist von Natur aus vorerst nicht nachtragend. Er weiß, er ist nicht irgendwo, sondern in Preußen und überlegt, ob überhaupt er, der Einzelne, gemeint sein kann oder ob dieses verhindert mehr für Wandergruppen gedacht ist. Okay, since only a few you can Prevent forest fires. Anyone who sets out from Wiepersdorf, a village surrounded by the forests of Brandenburg, and heads into the rugged natural world, must, before they enter, take note of a signpost with the wording, Prevent forest fires. This brings the visitor up short. How is he supposed to conduct himself? He actually wanted to walk idly through the sylvan tranquility, that is, to do nothing. But now, ante potas quietatis, he is required to prevent. Prevent forest fires. It is more like a command. Hey, you there! Someone is yelling at you. By nature, the stranger is not at first inclined to take umbrage at this. He knows he is not just anywhere, but in Prussia, and he wonders whether this prevent is even aimed at him, the individual. Perhaps it is intended more for groups of hikers. Back home in far-off Austria, the most that might be written on such a sign is, no forest fires, please. and without an exclamation point. If anything, instead of punctuation, you might see jewelers' praying hands. That would be clear and polite. Having prevent forest fires yelled at you cannot be understood at all without interpretation. After all, a forest fire in itself can never be prevented. If a forest fire occurs and is identified as such, then it is already a forest fire. A forest fire only becomes a forest fire once the forest is on fire. Not unless it is on fire can the forest be identified as a forest fire. Where there is no forest fire, there is for the time being only forest. It is only when the forest is on fire that it becomes, in its whole being, a forest fire. And then it cannot be prevented. One can try to put it out. That is a different matter. If that was the goal, then the sign ought to read, put out forest fires. But it explicitly says, prevent forest fires. And, moreover, several of them. But how many? At least two, at any rate. The upper limit would have to be all of them except one. For it expressly does not say on the sign, prevent all forest fires. One of them must in any case be left over. Between those two limits, one has a free hand. The visitor looks around and conscientiously discovers no forest fires. Now, if he is to prevent anywhere between 2 and nearly all forest fires, there first needs to be a forest fire available. For several without one, at least the first one is impossible. So it seems that there is one forest fire free, probably for the purpose of demonstration. The Austrian forest walker knows in his heart of hearts that a forest fire is not something one deliberately causes. He prefers a forest fire to happen to him. He strides as if dreaming through the forest, drops an ignited match, and strolls with instinctive assurance past the flaming trees and out of the erstwhile forest. It seems utterly pointless to direct requests, let alone orders, to the Austrian, who enters the forest as if he is not even there. Orders make the Austrian especially dreamy. An Austrian sign for Austrians in Austria could at best accomplish something if it hinted at the notion that the forest walker might perhaps, with all due respect, ask himself if by chance a forest fire might have got away from him. But that would not be intended personally. Such a sign would also have to be mounted with the text facing the woods. Then the Austrian either takes note of it after his walk in the forest, or he does not. The Austrian does not from the outset take note of anything at all. He thinks in retrospect. The Austrian per se is a person who reflects afterwards. The German, on the other hand, starts from the presumption that there is an arsonist inside every hiker and effectively urges his forest walkers to regard the others as potential pyromaniacs. When looked at like that, the brusque prevent forest fires even takes on a polite tone. The German mistrusts the individual and expresses it in general terms. He addresses the others and means you. The German starts with the advantage of his basic knowledge that everyone who sets foot in the forest does so with the intention of starting a fire. And this allows him to walk far more attentively through the woods. As he patrols his pine trees and coolly gauges their combustibility, the German must prevent any pyromaniacs from beating him to it. The meaning of the Prevent Forest Fires sign is becoming more and more clear to the visitor. It is directed to the potential instigator of a forest fire. The German forest walker who enters the woods as an arsonist is prevented from starting the fire and leaves the forest as an inspired friend of nature. Since the German always wants to be first in everything, one would not be altogether incorrect in deducing from the above premise that he does not want to be left behind in the starting of forest fires. He must endeavour, by all available means, to stop the arsonist who tries to beat him to it, so that the German forests may teem with German pyromaniacs, observing one another and preventing each other from realizing their most secret wishes. Darkness has enveloped the visitor, who is still standing in front of the signpost, pondering. He will turn around and head back to Wiepersdorf, enriched by the knowledge that the Austrian reflects and the German directs.